So this is our first video lesson for geometry. While you're watching this video, you're supposed to take notes along in your notes packet that you got in class. Write down everything that I write down for you, just like you were in class taking notes. Just like when you're in class, if you were playing with your phone or texting somebody or checking out Snapchat, you're going to remember about as much from this as you would have remembered if you were doing that during class. So this kind of puts the ball in your court. You're the one that's going to have to decide that you're going to take this seriously and you're going to use this as an opportunity to learn, not an opportunity to be distracted, play on your phone, have another window open where you're looking at something on the internet. While you're doing this, this is all you should be doing. So we're going to go ahead and get started. In geometry, we have terms that can be described as undefined terms. Okay, and they're called undefined terms because they can only be explained using examples and descriptions. We can't actually define them mathematically, but we can describe them pretty well. And three of those are points, lines, and planes. So you've probably heard of these things before, but we're going to get a little more specific and try to understand them a little better. So a point is a location. It doesn't have size or shape. It just marks a location. The way we name a point is with a capital letter. So an example of that might be a big capital P for point. And what that would look like is on a graph or in a picture, you would see points and they would have capital letters next to them. And that lets you know that that's a point and it's marking a location. Okay, our next undefined term is a line. A line is made up of infinitely many points. So what that means is infinitely many points means if you make a bunch of points, well then you could make just as many more points in between those points, and you could make even more points in between those points, and you could continue just making points, and you could put more points in between them, and more points in between them, and then pretty soon they all connect and make a line. The way that we name a line is with a cursive lowercase letter or with any 2 points on the line. Okay, and I'll show you a little example of what that means. So if we have a line, they're always going to be marked with these little arrows on the end. That lets us know that they continue forever in both directions. And this could be line L, lowercase cursive L. Or we could have 2 points on here. This could be A, this could be B. We could say that this is line A, B. And we just have to put a little line symbol on the top of it to let everybody know that we meant that it's line AB. Or we could call this line L. Either way, we know that that's the line we're talking about. Now, something about lines that you need to know is that there is exactly one line through any 2 points. So you don't need to write this, but I'm going to draw a little example of something. I make this line. Notice I can't make another line that goes through these 2 points that's not already that blue line. So hopefully that makes some sense. There's exactly one line through any 2 points. Okay, our third undefined term, a plane, is a flat surface made up of points that extends infinitely in all directions. So if you could think of a piece of paper, and on every piece of paper, if this is our piece of paper, there's lots of points all over this piece of paper, right? And if we continue making points and filling in all the points on the paper, eventually we would just fill in the whole paper. We would cover all of it, and we could keep going with those points in all directions, all over the place. And we'd eventually fill all that in. And just like a piece of paper, just imagine that it stretches out forever in all directions. This may not be the best little visual example, but a plane is something that's kind of hard to draw, as you'll see in a minute. So the way that we name a plane is with any 3 points not on the same line, or a capital cursive letter. So the way that a plane is usually represented is by drawing a parallelogram shape like this. And just imagine that this is something that goes on forever in every direction, but we can't draw that, so we have to draw it a certain size and a certain shape. So this is what we draw. Now in this plane there's going to be points. Right? And one of the ways that you might see this plane named is with a cursive capital letter up in one of the top corners. So we could say that this is plane JKL. We could say that it's plane KML, or any combination of any 3 of those letters, as long as we say that it's the plane that we're looking at. Or we could just call it plane P, just depending on what you have. Some pictures won't have the cursive letter, some pictures won't have 3 points. So depending on what you're looking at determines how you name it. Okay, our next one is another word that you've probably heard before, a segment. Okay, a segment is part of a line that has 2 endpoints. It can be measured. So if we look back up at this line we drew up here, this line AB, well, just from A to B right there, that's just a segment of line AB. So the way that we name a segment is with our 2 endpoints. So what that would look like is we have segment AB. And we could have just taken it and just cut it right out of this line and drug it down here, and that would be our segment AB. Now the way that we write that, just like for the line we put line on top AB, for a segment we're going to put AB, and we're just going to put a segment, which is basically the symbol for a line but without the arrows on it, which indicates that it's not a line, it's a segment. The last term, which you probably have heard before also, is called array. Array is part of a line that has 1 endpoint and extends infinitely in the opposite direction. So if we look up at our line that we drew and we go from B this way, that would be array. The way that we name array is with the endpoint and another point. One thing to remember that's very important is the endpoint is first when we're naming. You'll see what I mean here in just a second. So if we have array, kind of looks like an arrow. This might be GH, and we would call this array GH, and we label it like that. So the big things for you to take away from this little part is lines are described this way, segments are described this way, and rays are described this way. If you can get that part straight in your head, it's going to make everything else a lot easier for you for the rest of the year. Alright, so one more word on the next page. The intersection of 2 or more geometric figures is the set of points they have in common. So it's not as complicated as you might think. If you have 2 lines that cross, that's their intersection. If you have 2 segments that cross, that's their intersection. So don't overthink intersection. Collinear is a word that we need to know. Collinear points are points that lie on the same line. So an example would be A, B, C, and D. A non-example would be W, X, Y, and Z. So Y is not on the line, so Y is not a collinear point. It would be called non-collinear. Okay, the same thing goes true for lines for points in a plane. So if we had a plane and we had a bunch of points, those points that are all in the same plane would be coplanar. Points that are not in the same plane would be non-coplanar. So it might seem to you like, well, that's an easy picture to draw. I'll just draw a little box and I'll put an A, I'll put a B, I'll put a C down here. But one thing you might see a line like this, and that's kind of trying to illustrate that this line goes through the plane, so it intersects it there, but the point down here, point C, is not in the plane, so it's non-coplanar. All right, so real quickly, I want you to use this diagram at the right, and I want you to name all of the things that are listed here. And when you come into class tomorrow, that's what we're going to talk about, is how do you name these things in this picture. So enjoy your evening.